Tyson Anderson here again from Anderson Beagles. If you will, come on in. And that's my wife in the back, silly as ever. Come on in, folks.
Songs on our new album. And I'd like to do an old timer that I wrote back in '46 and recorded it. And this was Elvis Presley's first.
We're excited about having Mr. Louis Long on tonight. Come on in, folks. Friday night, the mood is right. It's a little Bill Monroe, Blue Moon of Kentucky. Well, he was singing. I'm going to give it to about 7 o'clock. We got about a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and bring on Mr. Louis Long.
We've been doing some of the songs on our new album.
What's going on, Mr. Trooper? How you guys, Mr. Allen, Barentine, Mr. Francis, how are you guys week going so far? How did it go? Hope it went well. Yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are. Thank you for joining in, you guys. And as usual, thank you all for viewing this with us and chiming in. If you will, do share this. Go ahead and share it. Share it. Invite your friends and followers. Put it in the ARHA Little Pack division, wherever you will. Go ahead and share this broadcast. Share if you will. What's going on, Casey? And let's go ahead and get this thing up and going. Yes, sir. Yes. Well, yeah, I know, right? Well, the time is 7 o'clock, and I have no friends. Time is 7 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and bring on Mr. Louis Long. If you guys don't know who Mr. Louis Long is, he's the guy that campaigned New York Nick. He campaigned him. He had several other dogs. A lot of people just know him by New York Nick, but he's very talented, a very gifted individual as far as a hunter. He's a gunner extraordinaire. So enjoy, and like I said, go ahead and share this and share it, get it on out there, and we're going to go ahead and bring him on. Excuse me.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Long, how you doing, sir?
Oh, how you doing there, Phil?
I'm doing good. I hope you are.
Yeah, doing pretty good. I want to ask you something before we start. If I put this on speaker, would it bother you, or would it bother anything?
It shouldn't. Let's see if you can try it, and let's see if you have any feedback real quick, if you don't mind.
Okay, it's on speakerphone. I thought it might echo or something like that.
Okay, no, sir. It sounds fine. Sounds mighty fine.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir. So, guys, this is the voice you're hearing right now is that of Mr. Louis Long. Will you tell the people a little bit about who you are, where you come from, how you got your start, in Beagles, your first Beagle, so forth, however you pretty much want to go about it. As I talked with you briefly before, Mr. Long, this is totally unscripted. You can just flow and go however you feel led to go.
Okay, thank you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Well, I live in central Kentucky. I'm about 30 minutes from Lexington, I guess. And I guess getting my start with Beagle Hound was just like a lot of guys, just a young guy. And the first night I ever had was a 2/3 Beagle, a third bird dog, pointer bird dog. That's kind of the way I started in Beagle, and then I went to foxhounds and coonhounds, and then back to Beagles. And I got to hanging out with some old boys that was into the field trial thing. And R.B. Chester, Jim Latimer got to be real good friends of mine, and Lenton Chris and some of the boys here in my area. And we kind of got to hanging out and around here, just local trials. We didn't have, at that time, the dogs that had come down from Michigan and up north and New York. So we didn't have any of them. We just had the old line-bred cottontail dogs. And me and R.B. took a trip down to Louisiana to a large pack on quite an experience. We've seen dogs that would just run off and leave ours. So much faster and hard hunting, very aggressive dogs. So over the years, we began to look at some of that stuff. And then I had another buddy over here, John News, had some good dogs, real good, nice hounds, and he was getting out, judging some trials, and I would kind of tag along with him and see what was out there, and kind of trying to get my mind on what I wanted. And that's kind of how I got started into the field trial end of it. Just watching dogs and meeting different guys and talking with them and learning from them and things that they had done and improving their dogs. So that's kind of the way I got started.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, how did you get, your first start as far as with Beagles? Or the dog you said was 2/3 Beagle and it was something else. Who gave you that dog? How did you get into that? Did your father and them have dogs or something like that, roundabout?
My granddaddy had an old Beagle hound, and she got bred by my neighbor's pointer, a liver-headed pointer. And the pups were the prettiest, houndiest looking things you ever seen, so I picked me out a male out of that bunch. And he was a rabbit machine. He'd find every rabbit in the country. He had a high-pitched chop mouth to him, kind of hot nose, but now he could, back then, once you was wanting something, bring that rabbit back to that 410. That was my main thing, and put meat on the table. That was what I was out there for. It wasn't no sporting event at all. It was just putting meat on the table at that particular time.
Wow.
And I think that's a lot of the way the true houndsman got started. It's been a boy like it, and with a 410 Ivy Johnson shotgun out there, and to bring the meal back to the table, and Dad give you a pat on the head, and I think that's where our first love started. Was back then we were boys.
Wow. Now, Mr. Long, how long have you been into dogs altogether?
Into Beagle Hound or just dogs?
Yes, sir. Just the Beagle Hounds or dogs, or if you want to say, well, let's say Beagles. How long would you say you've been in as far as rabbit hunting and all of that stuff?
Oh, ever since I was a boy. I've had Beagle Hounds ever since I was a boy.
Wow.
Not what we got nowadays, because we just didn't have that dog down here then. We had the old hair dog, the old cottontail dogs. He was a little old heavy bodied dog with rough hair on him, tail as big as your arm, flag tail,
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't a registered dog. Somebody had a good old rabbit dog, and they bred another good old rabbit dog, and ended up some pups. That's how you got them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how I started into it. Just foolish stuff like that.
Wow.
And,
That's pretty interesting, I tell you. Now, it's funny that you said something. You said something that was very monumental to me, because I understand and I can relate. I don't know who else can. I'm pretty sure somebody can, but I can definitely relate to what you said as far as you had a pointer, and I won't stay there too long. You had a pointer mixed with a beagle, and that worked for you guys in that time. And it's funny because nowadays, of course, that they want the champions bred to the champions and champions of champions and all of that stuff. But in those days, like you said, the most importance of that line, or of that really wasn't even a line, of those dogs was, like you said, to provide and put meat on the table. Now that's powerful. But as you transitioned, Mr. Long, from those English pointer and beagle on up to the cottontail dogs, where was your transition as far as your first, I don't want to so much as say trial dog, but the dog that you seen that had that headiness, that grit, that spunk? Which one of those dogs first came to you, or what was your first hound of that more northern hair type of running style?
A big old Kingwood shorted bitch that I bought off of Art Winter and Dan Jakeway. I bought her over here, Jessamine County Trial, as the first dog that I had that was capable of competing. And I've told this tales to several people. I went over there, and they had Dan Jakeway was there, and he had two of them in the pen. He had a male and a female. And he wanted $500 a piece for them, which was a lot of different times that day, and I'd look at her. She's a big old red dick, friendly she'd be, about 6 months old, a good-looking male standing there. So, there's a boy named Bailey at that time, Dave Bailey. And Dave come by and he said, that's a nice looking husband. He said, yes, you sure is, Dave. And I said, who owns her? And he said, well, Art Winkler probably, but Dan Jakeway's down there, and he's got the Dawgs down here. So anyway, I talked to him, and he wouldn't come down a penny. He would not come down a penny on her. And I thought, boy, if I buy that dog, my wife will kill me dead at 4 o'clock. How am I going to tell her about this? But anyway, I let her go that day. So I went back on Saturday. Big males were running. I went back and walked up there that morning. He was there, and he said, won't you just go on by her? He said, you want her bad? He said, go on by her. I said, he said, Jack. He said, I'll sell you both of them. I said, I can't afford both of them. And I can go home. So I ended up behind the female. The male standing there was Silver Bullet, if you ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he turned out to be. I took this female, and I went into Louisiana with her, and I won down at Donaldsonville, Louisiana with her. And she had later on some health issues. She had lived to be 2 years old, make a long story short. I never got a pup out of her. Well, I had seen Kingwood Shorty. I had the opportunity to see him. And I've always told anybody that asked me, that's the best dog the best male dog I ever seen on the ground was Kingwood Shorty. And so that was the line of dog that I wanted.
Mm.
And so I kind of started watching, and like I said, there was none of them down this country. You couldn't get them. They wasn't down here. Then Jessamine County trial to be a pretty big thing, and some of those dogs began to come down here. And when they came down, they just dominated. I mean, they pushed up to the back burner. They just dominated. We didn't have anything like that. That could run up there with them, and some of the snot stuff was filtered down here. And that's pretty much what we were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the guys got on, kind of got into it, and knowing what to get a hold of was, that was a thing. A lot of guys jumped into it and spent a lot of money and ended up with nothing. It wasn't, that's not all that stuff is good. It's like anything else, not all of it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And what these boys were doing, excuse me, they were buying dogs that was them boys' cold. That's what they were getting a hold of. And they would come down here, and we'd go out running. They looked like flipping idiots, all over the country. Couldn't catch them. And, then they kind of got disgusted with that, and kind of slowed down and got back into what we had. And we place a dog now and then. That's pretty much what I was seeing at that time. Then we went, R.B. Chester had an old dog that he had got off of John News. I can't remember that old dog's name right now. Many times I've seen him.
You ain't talking about New City Cruiser, are you? New City Cruiser?
No, the Cruiser was the same. He was out of Lord Buckingham, and this dog here is an RB head. I can't think the dog's name to save my life. He's been steel champion.
Oh, Indian Hill Major.
Major. All right. RB had him down here. And he was just a super nice, good, clean running hound. And I like some of that. I like that, but I still didn't make my mind on anything like that. I didn't settle in on this is what I want. And I'd seen John News and stuff run, and a buddy of mine had bred a female to him. They had some nice puppies, but it still wasn't what I was looking for. It just wasn't tripping my trigger some way or another. Then I went to, I was up at Portland, Kentucky, and I seen an old dog run up there. I said, now this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. And there's Andy's Cola Patches.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, he was the hardest running, hardest hitting dog out there. I'm not saying Major didn't beat him. Major would beat him some. But he was more on the line of what I wanted. he was just an old cottontail bred dog, and just somewhere to come out, being that type dog, big black and tan, strong, good nose, good mouth. But he really had nothing in behind him that I was interested in. I was done figured out then. It's you can't you can't find out a colored book. You've got to go back in behind and find what's in behind them. If you're going to count on get you a line of dogs. And so I just began to start just kind of watching, and I had thought another. I said, well, I'm getting ahead of myself now. I was watching. I was down in Louisiana, and I was sitting on a bench down there. And a guy by the name of Mr. Henry Moore out of Carolina come up and said, "Am I no kid?" And me and him got there talking, and I told him what I was looking for. He said, "Let me tell you something, dog to watch." He said, "It's a little old black dog running up New York." And said he belongs to a big old fella up there, the name of John O'Trooper. He said, if you talk to him, he's rude and everything, but said, he'll tell you the straight if you talk to him. And anyway, I'm sure John's listening to this. Anyway, I watched the dog through the better bigly. And some guys that had seen him, and watched the dog. And he had plenty of foot, good brain, line control, would cut you from the inside, turn a rabbit on you. And that's what I was looking for. And Mr. Jim Latimer went to Wood County, West Virginia. And John had Pappy and Sure both up there. And Jim took some pictures of the dog and brought back, well, he wasn't as big as I thought he was. According to the pictures, I found out later that he was a full-size 15-inch dog, but he looked small. And so anyway, that's when I got interested in the graphic stuff. Just talking to different guys about that. Some would be negative about him. He ain't got enough gears or this or that. But when you seen where he was winning, it add up. He was running large pack trials, and you've been to large pack trials. You've got to move. You've got to move. You've got to be in that pack, and to do any good. And I thought, well, if he's running what I've seen, if he's winning them trials, he's got to have enough foot. That's not a problem. And but like I said, there was none in this country, none available. Nobody down here, even very few of you hear of Grampy except through the Better Beagles magazine. That's and black tan was the most popular dog on the world down here. Nobody liked black and tans, And then Donnie Campbell, he had some of the socket to me stuff, big black and tans and nice looking hounds, nice running hounds. And I looked at them, but it's still just dogs that wasn't doing it for me. They just wasn't what I was looking for. So I pretty much just kind of laid back and watched. Well, lo and behold, there's a boy by the name of James Boyd bought this New York Nick dog from John, had him shipped in. Well, he bought him to stay little. He didn't stay little. So R.B. sister ended up with him. In the meantime, I had bought a big old copper boy bitch from somebody. I don't remember who I bought her from now. And they all wondered. Copper boy was hot at that time. They wondered. So we was at a turkey shoot. And R.B. walked over and he said, "I hear you got that copper boy bitch." And I said, "Yeah, I've got her." And I said, "R.B., she ain't gonna count." I said, she don't know nothing. I kind of like to have her. Well, he told me, said, "I'll trade you a Nick dog." Well, I like jerk his arm out of his shoulder. And I got Nick, and I'm going to be honest with you, the first few times I went out, I was kind of sorry I had him. He was, he hung up in every fence. He'd sit and howl. And I said, "Lord, this dog ain't got a brain in his head." But when he finally started, he like he'd been running 10 years. He was just solid as a rock. This is what I've been looking for. And then you start looking something, to cross back with him, what would work with him. And I made some bad crosses. I made some crosses that did not work. I know it did. I mean, I had them, and they ended up going to rabbit hunters and stuff like that. They was good old rabbit dogs, but that's all they were, just good old rabbit dogs. And that's kind of how I started with Nick in the field trials thing.
Now, now when you got Nick, how old was he, and what did you see out of that dog? What made you say, okay, he's totally different than any of the other dogs I've had before this dog? So forth and so forth. I'm watching something out of him. I'm seeing him develop at a rapid pace, or did he even develop at a rapid pace, or what kind of hound was he as you begin to take him into the place of progression, and he transitioned from a boy to a man?
Well, when I started with him, he would even run. He packed a pop can or a stick for 6 months, and he'd go with the dog, but he wouldn't open up much, just once in a while. And he had a big old booming voice. You could hear him for 10 miles. And then he'd come to a fence, and he'd hang up the fence and sit there and howl and stuff, So I started running a lot myself. I'm lucky I live on a farm here, and I got to take him out and run him by himself, and he got his confidence up. And come quick, honey. When he got going, he was quick. I mean, he was going quick. And me and RB's sister ran about every other night. Me and him was out in the summertime. We was out at night running. And he was running. He was running with RB's dogs. They was pretty much the same speed and everything. But I noticed Nick had a lot of talent. He had a big nose, and he had a lot of talent. He always knew where the rabbit was at. He knew where that line was at. And I just kept watching him, and just to see what he was doing. And back that time, me and RB could cover some ground. Then dogs had to be pretty quick to get up there before me and him got there. And we would watch the dogs cross, and RB had an old dog that we he was just something else. He wouldn't try, but an old dog called Gator. And me and RB hauled that old dog 1,000 miles, I guess. And he was just as solid as a rock. He could just walk through a check and just seemed like he knew where he was at. And I was running a lot with him. And I'd say Nick learned a lot from him, the things that old dog could do. And, the dog wouldn't trial. He didn't have no personality. If you took him to trial, he would stand on a chain and never tightened up the whole time he was there. It looked like he just broke his heart. And then RB got going some trials, and I'd take Nick, I'd place him some, and I don't know, I kept watching him, but I had my mind on the bitches. I wanted my own line of dogs. I knew what I want, and I knew the bottom side of what I wanted to be. I like that shorty stuff, and I still do. I still like that Kingwood shorty stuff. I kept watching. So an old boy on the bitch called Freckles, straight out of Kingwood Shorty. She'd been a good one in her day. But he decided he wanted to breed that Nick dog of mine, so he bought her. And I got a male and a female out of it. And I got a bitch that I finished, and the male got too big. And I had plans for him, and the guy that I take him and hunt him and keep him, and I just gave him to him. He had that dog neutered, of all things, had him neutered. And I went back to I was going to use him, and he said, well, I neutered. He said, I neutered space everything I got. He said, I ain't going to put up that hunting during hunting season, coming and eating dogs around. And that kind of told the changing things. So I watched around and for a certain line of dogs that I had a lot of respect for, that I'd see run just full of guts and heart and could do it all day long. And that was a Snops line of dogs. And so I started crossing Nick over some of the Snop stuff. And I was having pretty good luck with that stuff, And that's pretty much what I've always done. I've got some stuff that's got, well, I've had some stuff. I don't have it now, but I've had some stuff that had the old dog, the top dog stuff. And probably one of the best bitches that I've ever owned or ever seen on the ground. I had her. And Windy Ridge Daisy. That's probably one of the best bitches I ever seen. And I'm telling you, oh, she's mine. She was that good. Anybody that ever seen her run, you know, could tell you what she was. And she went back to Super Dog. It's what she went back to.
Now, did you ever cross Daisy up with Nick?
No, she was out of Nick.
Oh, wow.
She was out of Nick and that Super Dog bitch. That's what she was out of.
Oh, wow. Man.
Yep.
Now,
and
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. I wasn't going to say anything. I was just, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
But what I've done after I finished Daisy, and then I was going to breed her. I finished her in 6 months. I think I didn't need to go at all because she finished so quick. And I was campaigning another one, she passed on me. And, you know, I was pretty much just got out of time. So I come right back and bred Daisy back to the son of Nick. And the son of Nick went back to the old top dog stuff. And that's what I bred to. Well, she never had a pup worth a dime. I ain't say worth a dime. They was rabid dogs. But they never had no fire to them. And I turned around and I made another cross with another Nick male, same thing. So I got the papers out here one night and I went back and pedigree stuff and went back to them and I seen a bad hole in the bottom of that pedigree. I mean, it was like a sinkhole. I said, oh, God, there's my problem right here. This so happened that bitch had gotten down this country, and I said, I'm not going to mention any names. No one's doing that. But when I seen that in there, I said, oh, Lord, here's my problem right here. So I turned around and I sold her. I sold her to a guy down this country, and he'd done the same thing. He bred her and never got nothing worth 15 cents. And that learned me a valuable lesson. You know, that pedigree means a lot. It means an awful lot. If you go back there and you find a hole here, a hole there, you know what I'm talking about. I say hole.
Absolutely.
It's just something that really somebody had an old bitch and they're bred to a good dog and maybe got a pup or two was decent, and that's all it amounted to. And that's what I found in her pedigree. So, you know, pedigrees are very important, you know, and that's the reason, you know, that I appreciate so much the things that AKC does, you know, with these breed of these dogs and how they've kept up with things over the years, the DNA and all that. All that stuff is important. You know, if somebody houndsman that wants to improve the breed, you know, he needs to know. He needs this information available to him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's the way I see it. You know, that's pretty much the way I am nowadays, you know. And I go back, when you look at a pedigree, you don't go back 3 generations. You know, you got to go back further than 3, you know, to find out what's back in there behind them. I'll give you a perfect, for instance. I had a bitch down here, a good one. Her name was Whining River Midnight. I mean, she was a hoss cat. And I took her and I went to New York with her. I ran her and she was in the large back national. She ran up there and I didn't place her. I wasn't expecting to when I went up there. But anyway, you know, she was a good one. Well, we turned around and bred her back to a Grandy male. She had pups. 2 of them was red. I mean red, son. I'm the yellow-eyed red. Well, I looked back, the 5th generation was a dog calling their Northern Red Cherry. You know what that tells you anything? That was 5 generations. 2 of those puppies come out as red as they could be. So if you think that 5th generation don't mount to something, you know, you're bad wrong. You know, it'll reach back in there, you know, and bite you in the butt if you're not careful.
Wow. Man, I tell you, and you know what? I'm so appreciative for you to say that, because a lot of people don't actually understand when they think that you're just breeding a champion to a champion. oftentimes that can, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think oftentimes that can be a bit of the coincidence. When a person does breed a dog that just so happened to finish back into a dog that just so happened to finish, versus a dog that you really looked at, let's say like yourself, for example, Mr. Long, you really looked past Daisy's field trial championship. You looked at her as the quality of a hound. And had she obtained the field trial championship title or not, you still would have probably bred her just because you understand what she was, whether the judges saw it or not or whatever. And I tell people that too often at times, that you got to be able to look past that dog's accomplishment, whether he is or is not accomplished. But like you just said, look for the holes in that pedigree because they'll chew you up and spit you out. You said something. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You mentioned a dog that I didn't want to get away from too fast because he's, I'd say, heavily influenced in the lines that I'm looking to run and get back into now. Andy Clover Patches. What can you elaborate on him just a little bit? I don't want to put too much emphasis on him, but can you give us a little bit of elaboration on him?
Well, the first time that I seen Andy, the boy that owned him lived up around Woodland, Kentucky, actually up in that area, right there in the corner of Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Owned him. And like I said, I've been running, with these boys down here, and I went up there, and I seen Andy. Boys, we ain't backing up here to handle that dog. I can tell you that right now. I watched him run the first series. I thought, shoot, boys, we just want to take our little lunch and go on to the house. But we ain't got nothing to this dog. And I don't know where Andy got it from. It sure wasn't in his pedigree. Not that I knew of, not the dogs that I knew of. I didn't see that kind of power and that kind of ability to just hammer a rabbit like he could hammer one, And it just wasn't in his pedigree. I don't know whether he's a freak or what, or what happened, or what. He was a big old black and tan dog, stout-made dog, and just a beautiful animal, just a beautiful thing to look at. And, I asked a lot of people about him up there, and, nobody could really tell you, he come out of this old dog here that was tough, a lot like Andy, but nobody could tell you that. Nobody knew where he got this power from, or where he could control that line like he was controlling with the speed that he had. Nobody knew where that was coming from. Mm-hmm. And, that's... I've seen some of it since. I've seen some Andy stuff. Some boys up in Michigan have got some of it. But Roger Turbush, I don't know whether you're familiar with that particular name or not, but he had some of it up there, and they crossed it back with Grampy. Mm. And I seen some nice stuff out of that. Some real nice stuff. Mm. And but like I said, Andy, at that time, him and Kingwood Shorty is two dogs that I seen, that stood out in my mind. And Kingwood Shorty, the difference between him and Andy, Kingwood Shorty, he was reasoning around why he could do what he could do. It was in his pedigree. He's supposed to do it. The way that rascal was bred, he's supposed to do it. And Andy didn't have that. To say that Shorty was a lot better dog, in my opinion, he was the best of the two dogs, but he wasn't that much ahead of, just a very little bit ahead of Andy, from what I got to see of him, and I don't know, Shorty, I think that's the only time I got to see him twice, but one time he was just on the lead, when I got to see him, he was on a trial, and he just had him there, and, but I actually got to see him run one time in a trial, and I was so impressed with him, that I knew that was one route that I was looking at, and then the old dog that got on a trooper, the Grampy dog, I began to look at him as my top side, and the Shorty stuff, as my bottom side. Mm-hmm. And it worked. It worked. I had some nice hands out in crosses. Really worked good for me.
Now, did you ever see any dogs out of clover patches that put you in the mind of him at all,
No.
like the Funk's Little Bell
No,
dog?
I didn't. I never seen anything. I never seen anything, that carried to with what he was. I just didn't see it, and, maybe you have, maybe you've seen him, but I haven't. I'm just telling you what I have seen, and I haven't seen anything that had the talent that Andy had. I just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was out there and it wasn't down here. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I never did see it.
Yes, sir. Did you ever get a chance to see old Funk's Little Bell run? I know Donnie capitalized on her a good bit.
Who, Bell?
Uh-huh.
The one Donnie Campbell had?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I remember that big Huzzy. Yeah, she was 16 inches.
Yeah.
Big old Huzzy, big old strong Huzzy. Yeah, I've seen Bell. Yeah. She was nice. She was a nice bitch. But I'm still telling you, I haven't seen anything could run like Andy. Coming out of. And I don't know what Donnie ever got out of her. Yeah, I know he bred her. I guess he bred her to Gunner, I guess. And but I don't remember seeing anything out of it. I'm not familiar with it. I didn't see anything. Go on and champion out or look good at a trial or what. I never did see any more of it. I don't know. And I had a Gunner bitch. Gunner and Donnie Campbell and John News had teamed up, and they made a cross with a bitch called Lucky, and I ended up with one of those pups. And she was nice. She was really a nice bitch. And run you a good rabbit. She's mean a rattlesnake. You couldn't. That's the reason I quit running her. She got to fighting in trials, and so I quit running her on account of that. And then I got rid of her because I didn't want it in my line of dogs. And you go out here and you see these dogs. It's a pretty good idea to go by the breeder's home and look at those dogs. See what the hell they've mannered. To me, I like a dog. I want a friendly dog. I don't want that dog when I go in around that pen, him knocking the bottom out of that box. And then look out, his eyes look like scared to death. And he'll be all right to get him out in the field. Well, I don't like that. I want that dog when I go in that pen. I want him to be on me, and friendly and good natured and all that, and not worried about snapping one of my grandkids in the face or something like that. And that was another problem that I had with some of the soccer tippy dogs. I seen some of them mirror snakes, and I didn't like that. And you had to haul them in a box by themselves. They eat another dog up. You put them in there, and I didn't like that. And it just, I don't know. I knew what I wanted, but it was a different problem. That getting what I wanted was a completely different thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Now, a lot of people don't really probably know you as far as the extreme runner that you are. As far as really being able to put a dog in good shape and condition one pretty intensely. Your running style, as far as being considered very unorthodox today, what would you tell people as far as in your running, or not so much what would you tell? How are you being able to get the most out of those dogs like that? I mean, of course, running them, but how is it that you like to run the dogs, or when do you really see your opportunity or that window to begin to apply that pressure on that dog to really get the fullness of that potential out?
Well, each individual dog is different. It's different. But if you're out there in the field and you watch them, you see that dog's confidence level come up, and you take him out there and you got him out there by yourself and you hear him eat solo rabbit, just stay right on that rabbit, but you look and you think, that he's doing it easy, So that's when I usually put a little something on him, to see if I can rattle him up, rattle his chain a little bit. See if he's competitive, or is he just going to jump back there and just run what's left him, or where he's going to try to get on that front end. I can run a rabbit on the back end, this dog, well, I was judging quite a bit. I wasn't looking for a front-end dog. I didn't go in there looking for a front-end dog, but a dog go in on me. I better see him up sometime today. I better see him up there and see us got it us going. You know, he's not going back there and me too all day long and win a trial for me. You know, he's going to have to show me that he can get up there and take control of that back and run that rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And running dogs, you know, hey, just keep adding a dog here and there, and a dog, you know, and first thing you know, you go out and you got a 4-dog pack, and that old dog, that pup that you've been fooling with just seems to get stronger, and you see him up on the front end part of the time, you know, not all the time, but see him up there part of the time, and you hear him pull some good checks of some older dogs, you know, get him a check here and there, you know, and then, you know you've got something, you know, to look forward to and enjoy, you know. And that's what this is all about, enjoying it. You know, going out there with a good, clean pack of hounds, good, clean mouth dogs, and being able to enjoy it. You know, that's what this is all about. It's for our pleasure. You know, God gives these things for our pleasure. I firmly believe that. You know, and, you know, when I go out there, if I go out there and, you know, and I've got a dog that's making me miserable, that they're doing something in my back that I don't like, that dog ain't going to be out there many more times. You know, if I give him every opportunity, and he's still, you know, he's still running in the middle of the back and don't seem to have any ambition to get on up there and get him a piece of that front end and go with it. You know, I'm not going to fool him too much. You know, because, like I said, when you go out here and you run these dogs, we do it because we love it. You know, this started back when we were little boys, right? We didn't develop this when after we done got married, got rid of our kids. You know, we've done this since we was little fellas. It's something about the sound of a hound that has set our teeth on edge, and that started back when we were little boys. You know, an old dog bark. You know, maybe treat a possum, you know, or whatever. But it's something we enjoy. Mr. Henry Moore told me and him were down in I guess the same time down in Louisiana or somewhere. We were sitting talking. And I said, Henry, what did you get? I said, I know you was raised right in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I said, how did you ever get into hounds? He said, Lewis, I climbed up on the roof one night. Said it was too hot to sleep inside the house. Said I climbed, got my little billing blanket and crawled down on the roof. And he said, I heard a pack of hounds running back in there behind. Said something went all over me that night. And he said, I told somebody, he said, I've got to have me some hounds. You know, and that's where we all are. You know, something about that hound that just does something to us, you know. And you don't want to go out there with something that's messing that up for you. If you've got a dog that's running their mouth all over and blabbing around here and there, you know, that dog is taking the joy out of it. Get rid of that sucker. You know, don't keep him. I don't care if he is out of so-and-so. You know, don't let something take the enjoyment away from you that you enjoy. Now, I get jumped on a lot of times over this one remark. If you come down here and run with me, I've got one thing in my mind. I'm going to kick your butt if I can. You know, because I enjoy that. You know, I want to kick your butt. You know, when you come down, when we come to put our dogs on stringer at night, we're walking out, you know, and, you know, and you walk out and you can kind of strut. Because you know yourself, and that old boy Richie, if he's a hound, but he know he got his butt kicked. You walking out, he knows he kicked your butt, you know. And I get enjoyment out of that. You know, it's just something that I am. I just, you know, I enjoy the competition. When, you know, we out running, a couple or 3 guys, 4 guys, whatever. You know, I enjoy the competition. And to me, it is a competition. We're not running dogs out there. I'm not. Maybe they are, but I'm not. I'm not running dogs out there to hear bark. You know, I'm out there to kick your butt. You know, and to see if what I've done is right. You know, and anybody that knows me will tell you that. You know, that when you come down here, you know, you better be in a shape to run, because you might beat my dog, but you ain't gonna beat me, because my dog's gonna be in shape. Mm-hmm. You know, they're gonna be ready to roll when you show up. So, and that's the way I've always been. And I think most all true beaglers are competitive. Yeah, I really do, don't you?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, I do. I consider myself anyway.
I think so. And, and I think if I come up to your house and me and you're going to go rub dogs, if I know good well you're going to have on your mind, you won't be looking at my dog, but you're going to have on your mind, I want to kick his butt, you know. And it's nothing mean or nothing like that. It's just who we are, you know. And that's the reason you got hounds, and that's the reason you got Beagles, you know, because of that competitive nature that we are, you know. And especially when you get older, when you can't compete yourself, then you let your dog do the talking for you. You know, when you can't grab a football and run the touchdown, then, or play softball, you know, like you used to, then you turn to your dogs, you put more time in on them, and you use them to kind of release some of that tension, you know?
Yes, sir.
Are you that way?
I'm exactly. Yes, sir. No, sir. You're exactly right. I'm exactly that way. That's me all day. People will say, "Hey, I want to come over there and run some dogs with you, Tyson." Well, you know, man, they're sick, or they're too fat, and they're too old, or they're too young. I'm going to say this because if my dogs aren't in the shape that I know I want them to be in, and you're saying that you want to come check them out, either one, you really want to check them out; two, you really want to check them out, you want to whip up on me; or three, you really don't care to check them out, you just want to whip up on me, period. And I want to make sure that I am in shape. Me and the dogs.
Yeah, you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, now you go somewhere and, you know, you hear about this particular dog, you won't go see the dog run. You know, you want to see what he is.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe down the line, you know, down the road, you might be interested in something out of him or something like that. You know, but you know, you'd still like to kick that dog's butt. You know, that's who we are. You know, and I enjoy it. I love it. I had some medical problems the last few years, and I almost got out of it. You know, I had some things happen to me, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. You know, but through God's help and modern medicine, I've come out smelling like a rose. You know, I'm doing good. I feel good, and I run my dogs, run them hard. And I've got a couple of young dogs I'm really excited about. And, you know, I'm tickled to death. And John O'Cruger's going to be here Sunday night or Monday morning. And I'm quite sure the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have some sore-footed dogs. But we'll be a pounding, and I guarantee you that.
Man, I tell you, I know y'all going to put the leather in. Y'all going to take the leather, clean off those boots.
Yeah, we're going to be out there. And he's got a male that I'm really interested in that I watched running up there on Cottondale. I watched him up there, and I'm dying to see what he's going to be when he gets him down here on Cottondale. I really like the dog. I mean, I like him, and he's a right color. He's a black and tan, and I really like the little dog. What I see him on her. Now to get down here, as far as him knowing how to hunt Cottondale, you know, it's going to take him a while, you know, to find out where they live. But I feel like from what I've seen out of him, you know, that he's going to be worth looking at. You know, that's the way I feel about him, you know, and very high on the little dog. Well,
yes,
he's not
sir.
at least 14-inch dog. But most of my dogs are 15. I mean, they're, you know, and I have a hard time. I very seldom, well, I've never had a male. Nick is the only male I ever had that didn't go over. I'm not going to tell you Nick wasn't over, he was. Nick was over. But anyway, I've never got any males I could run. That's a long story short because of the size of them. And me and John has scratched our head many a time. Where has this come from? You know, where did it come from? Everything out of Nick, those males. And I mean, he started even the grandson and great-grandson. Still, I don't get any males. You know, I just can't get them that stays in. You know, and people ask me, you finished a lot of bitches, but how come you never finished no male? That's what it was. You know, of course, anybody that knew me well knew what the problem was, that I just didn't get any males, you know, that I could keep. You know, that would stay in. Most of it ended up around 16 inches.
Yes, sir. Let me ask you this question while I had it on my mind, because I know you probably have some great answers for it. How important is a dog's hunt and jump ability, and what are some of the things that you would tell any person to do as far as, or from what your own, experiences as far as trying to keep that hunt in that dog or in that line or family of hounds, Mr. Lewis?
Well, me being a cottontail hunter and hunting in this country, sawbriars, weeds, and the blackberry briars and all that, I'm not going in there. I'm not going there and stomp. I'm not going to stomp out rabbit, tally hole, and all that kind of stuff. My dogs have to hunt. That's one requirement. And when you're considering making a cross with a female, it's very important to know what kind of hunt she's got. When you go think about making a cross, and you don't know you bought her, she's a 6-year-old female. You've seen her run, and you was impressed with her, especially her hunt. Well, you can't make a dog hunt. I don't care what you make them get out of your way, stay out of sight, but you cannot make one hunt. And it's very important. That has to be done through your breeding program to keep that hunt in that line of dogs. And what I've seen out of that Grampy stuff and the Shorty stuff and the stuff that I've crossed with, Snops and stuff like that, is hunt. They got a lot of hunt to them. It may take them a while to learn, how to bust the briars and where rabbits live. It's going to take them a little while to learn that. But when they go in a briar patch and they jump that rabbit and run him out of there, if he's what I'm looking for, the next time he'll go back, he'll remember that briar patch. He'll remember where he found that old rabbit, where he got him up. Of course, it's a lot of other things too. That dog got to have brains. Dog got to be, he's very important to have some brains. And a dog, when you've got a good hunting dog, a good jump dog, that dog will hunt with his eyes as much as he hunts with his nose, maybe more so. Because I've been out with mine and I'd look to see a briar patch up above that, boy, there'll be no rabbits in there. Well, Greg, you see one of my dogs go to that briar patch. He was watching with his eyes. He was looking, where a rabbit might be. Well, that's brains when they do that. And that's how you come up. I've seen dogs hunt their guts out and never jump a rabbit. Just stay busy, that nose side go back and clear and never jump a rabbit. And I'm sure you have too. Just hunt your heart out, come in, they're pale bloody and everything else, but never jump a rabbit. And this old dog was coming along, looked like he wasn't hunting that hard. And every time he turned around, he'd jump on him. He knew where to go. He knew where to hunt. He was using his brain, figure it out, where to go, where to hunt.
Wow. Yes, sir. And it makes all the sense in the world. Now, let me ask you this. In breeding the way that you bred for so long, have you ever seen that grit, that hunt, or any of that begin to waver at all? Or it seemed like you begin to lose it? I know the answer to that. At least I believe I know the answer to that being no. But if you have, why? And if you have not, why?
I haven't seen it. The dogs that I'm running now is as tough as the first cross that I made with this line of dogs. I don't see any difference in them. I'm not maybe what you would call a tight line breeder. I bred out quite a bit. I have got kind of a rule of thumb. I don't have a problem going out on a good bitch, but I don't like to bring a male in on mine. Does that make sense to you? Does that make any kind of sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, that's kind of the way I see it. I don't mind to take my line of dogs and go out with them, but I do not like to bring. What was that? Our time up?
No, sir. No, sir. That was my phone. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was my phone.
All right.
But yeah, that's and that makes a lot of sense. I understand exactly why that happens like that. And see, a lot of people, if they only understood what all of that meant, as far as being able to breed the right dogs to the right dogs and keeping it like that, and not having to worry about losing that, because you hear so many people now, Mr. Long, and I'm pretty sure you've heard it the same way. You hear people say, well, you know, my dogs aren't quite like they used to be. They don't have this, or they don't have that, or they don't have this, or they don't have that. And it's because a lot of people have, you know, jumped ship. And we oftentimes say it. I mean, it seems like we're almost like a broken record, but it's the truth. And I continue to go back over or go back into and resolicit the same exact questions, or to go back into the same exact statements about jumping ships and stuff like that, you know, just the paper champions or the flavor of the months and different things, because I love to hear the different Beaglers' intakes on that. And it seems as if, you know, we all are in the same, pasture. We all are grazing the same and thinking the same. We're pretty much saying the same exact thing. Some may say it a little different, or add some, or take some away, or whatever. But essentially, we're all saying the exact same thing. And I think that's something that you've been breeding dogs. You think, what, 40 years or more than that?
Yeah.
40 years or more?
Yeah.
And you haven't lost hunt. That is awesome.
No.
That's awesome. And that's what it means to me, because, you know, I think a lot of people, even though you're not heavily line breeding or anything like that, I still think that I know for a fact you've got to be still breeding good dogs to good dogs. But those dogs you're breeding, 9 times out of 10, those are families of dogs. They're not all chopped up and watered down. So when you're breeding them back in, you're keeping the strongest of your traits, and those dogs are still able to, you know, give you and produce for you and run for you and all of that stuff. And I think that's pretty awesome, that you are still having that ability in those dogs like that. That's something that says a lot about what you're doing and your breeding program.
Well, you know, I bred these dogs to suit me and nobody else. You know, they're what I want. If it so happens somebody likes them, that's fine and dandy, you know. And I have run a lot of trials, lost a lot, won a few, you know, and you know, people would be coming out of. I'll tell you, for instance, I had run Nick, and I had just won. I won up in Illinois, and I came back and I won Workman, and I brought him to Central Kentucky's trial, and I took him. Everybody's looking at him because he was eye candy. He was a beautiful big rascal. And I was going out with him, and you know, everybody said, "That's that Nick dog. That's a New York dog." You know, and I hear, you know, back by him, and I was kind of cocky. Well, I took Nick over the hill there, and he looked like a flipping idiot all day. I mean, the judges give him everything they could. If it had been me, a judge, I'd have picked his butt up a long time before they did. But they gave him every opportunity. He looked like a flipping idiot. And so anyway, they finally picked him up. Well, I thought, I don't want to go back through that gallery. I'm going to sneak up this holler, you know, and get out of here and load him in the truck and get to the house, you know. Well, lo and behold, I started that little holler there, and everybody in that crowd must have come down the same way. But everyone, you know, what happened to him? What happened to him? You know, did he get hurt? Or did he pull up the lane? No, I said, he looked like an idiot. I said, he looked like a flipping idiot today. I'd never seen him do that. I'd never seen him act like that in my life. I went back and put him in the pen over there near kennels, put him in the kennels, and lo and behold, there's a female stand beside him as hot as it. I'm telling you, son, she was in heat, the world's worst. It had blowed his mind, you know. But he embarrassed me so much, I could have knocked him in the head coming up that holler, you know. And but he never showed no interest. The dog would open up and be a drive, and he would go in. The first time he checked, I looked and I seen him coming out there, you know, coming up a bank or something, you know, and ate up there the wind. And I said, "What's wrong with that fool?" You know. And like I said, the boys that were judging give him every opportunity, you know, to pull it together. And you know, we're human beings. You out here judging dogs, you know. If it's a good dog in there, I mean, I know it. You know, if somebody's got a dog that's got 2 wins on him, they go out there. Most of them judges know what dogs has got the wins on. I don't say it's influential. Don't mean it's influential, but they know it. You know, they know what dog's in there, and they're gonna get an extra look. You know, I mean, we're humans. You're gonna get an extra look. You got a dog that's been winning every time you put him on the ground. Yes, he's gonna get looked at. Is some dogs going to get overlooked? Yes, they are. You know, we're human beings, and it's nothing. You know, the first thing you hear, you know, is come out of the field drive, if a guy didn't place his dog, well, I tell you what, I don't know what they were thinking about it, but I heard that dog. I heard him when he got 3 kicks. Yeah, you hear him because you know his voice, and you looked at one dog. Them boys had looked at 7. And don't jump on them judges. I'm not saying that once in a while we don't get the shaft. I don't say once in a while we don't get. Maybe we do. Maybe we get cute. But I still firmly believe that if you've got a dog, you've got the total package. That dog will hunt, and he runs a rabbit the way it should be run. He does a good job. I still believe that you're gonna place that dog and you're gonna win with that dog. I always believe that. And I still believe it. I hear negative talk about judges now. It's no different. It was in 1987. It's the same thing back then. I hear the same thing, and I probably even said it myself. I've seen my dog look good, and never seen a judge drag his book out of his, But like I said, I was looking at my dog, and they had 7 dogs to look at. And you run to your tongues hanging out. I don't know how much I don't know where you got to see it. And they're not going to write it down unless they seen it. And I just don't. I don't like negativity in no form or fashion. I talk about judges or dogs. Get the dog that suits you. Bring the dogs that suit you. And if they suit you, don't worry about what that judge said. Don't worry about what nobody in that gallery said. You run what you like.
Absolutely.
You be happy with what you've got. I think that's a secret to this Beagles. Take the Beagle Hound and enjoy the dog for what he is. To me, one of the gutsiest. I've had fox hounds, coon hounds, greyhounds, and everything else. And the Beagle Hound, the gutsiest little animal I've ever owned, when it comes to hounds. And enjoy those dogs for what they are, and appreciate what they do. We don't go out the moor and hunt to put meat on the table. We don't do that anymore. I think it hurts your dog because I think this time me and my buddy had to kill 5 rabbits. And my dogs, I think they had maybe got a hold of 1 rabbit apiece or something. We don't do that we used to. We don't have the gun dog that we used to have, simply because we don't gun anymore. That's what it takes to make a gun dog is gun. You got knock rabbits down in front of them, let them get a hold of them, and learn. Even the old dogs that when I used to rabbit hunt, when that gun went off, my dog was there. When that gun popped, he was right there. And these dogs I got now don't. If that gun shoots, they don't come in, because they don't know to come in, But that's just where we're at nowadays. We don't have we don't have the environment we used to, where it was just tons of rabbits everywhere. We don't have that anymore. It's harder every day to find a place to run your dogs, a good place to run, and put your dogs in rabbits. It gets harder all the time. And they'll say, well, it's the coyotes or the bobcats. No, it's not. It's the bush hogs. That's what's cut our throat. The bush hogs and the cultivation and the spray. They don't let fence rows grow up like they used to. They got Roundup now. They go through the tractors, play the fence rows, and we just don't have the cover. That's what's hurt her, I think, as much as anything. We don't have near the environments we did when I was a boy. Well, when I was a boy, the gray and red foxes were thick. I mean, them things were thick. Well, we don't have. We got coyotes now. We got some bobcats down here. But I don't think the varmints are a problem. I think the 4-wheel drive tractor and the bush hog done more damage than any varmints going to the bush. Do you believe that way, or?
I believe it 100%. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's our biggest problem. And down here, I am lucky. I have got a lot of rabbits. I've got a lot of farms I run on. This is farm community where I live, and it's I've got a lot of areas I can run. And I'll stop and see an old type dog grow up with cedars and briars, and I'll stop and ask that guy. And he said, he said, if you want to go back there and run, he said, now don't go in there during deer season. No, I can go in there during deer season, And thank goodness here where I live, we don't have many deer. We got a 7-day gun season. That's it, And I'm proud of that because we don't have a lot of deer hunters in this area. And I know probably where you at there, plague, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Where you at?
Oh yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah, I'd say you got a lot of deer. Now, do you live in Charlotte, or where do you live?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I go up through that way on 40 sometimes when I'm going down where we screwed up at down there. We go up to, sometimes we go up 40 up in some area. Well, you have got some hunting up in there.
Oh yeah, yes sir. And then when we go down toward the coast of New Bern and Chocowinity and Elizabethtown and all down up in there, yeah, it gets good. It gets good running. Yes sir, it gets good running. Brown Summit and McLeansville and stuff like that. It's pretty good running. Yes sir. Yes sir. It absolutely is. We got a couple questions that came in, and I didn't want to cut that off. We had a couple questions come in. I want to ask them. One gentleman asked the question, says, would you say that old Breeze dog was one of the best reproducers of the line?
Well, yeah, I'd say she was. I'd say she's one of the better ones. I think John had better luck with her than I did, and John used her more than I did. But now, I know where that question comes from because he's got some of them. The boy, he's in China right now, but he lives not too far from me. And yeah, that was a tough line of dog, and that went back to old Breeze. I had 4 generations of them. That would go back to the old jigs. If you know anything about the jig dogs, that's where it went back to that. On her bottom side, with jigs, just tough as shoe leather. About 14-inch dogs, a lot of hunt, world of hunt, good foot. And John Retruva finished one up there. One called Showboat. He finished her. He come there and got her when she was 11 months old. I let him have her. Well, he picked her out of my kennels. And he took up there, and he finished her before she was 3 years old. And yes, they're tough dogs. They're real tough dogs. Anything else?
Yes, sir. One person asked the question, says, what dogs out there today do you feel could compete with Nick, but also the ones you would compare to Nick as well? So I guess he's saying, what dogs do you see out there today that you would compare to him or compare with him, and then those that you would say that could compete with him?
Well, I don't make the trials like I used to. I go once in a while and look. I go and look, see what's out there. And it's a dog that I'm real high, that I like. That's, the reason I like him because, he's mind gone stuff. But I watched him run in New York, and, he's got more foot than Nick had. He's a faster dog. I don't know how Nick would do nowadays. I don't know how he would do out there. Nick was a line control dog, had the foot when it was needed. I think I could steal place and maybe win with him. But I don't know. See, I haven't been out there enough to know what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of talk about the Reggie stuff. And Don Hogue, when I wouldn't breed that Daisy bitch of mine back to Reggie, he thought it was crazy. But I didn't want, that's not my line of dog. That's not what I'm interested in. I just didn't like, that line of dogs. I didn't want it in my yard, And it's not the only one that I had one in the yard. I've never had a Bronco dog in my yard, to breed or anything like that. Never have. Never had a Sox Philly in my yard to breed. And it's nothing, I'm not saying anything wrong with the dog. Never had a spur. I'm not saying anything wrong with the dog. I don't mean that at all.
Absolutely.
Guys have ducked them and done good with them. But they're not what I want. And like I said, I do it for me and nobody else, and that's just the way I am, and I think the true breeders, the dog's not the flavor of the month. They have got, when they do this, they got something in mind. When they make a cross, it's not dog sex. They've got something in mind. And they've got a good idea before these puppies ever born what they're going to be when they hit the ground, what they're going to look like. They're not going to look like no box of kittens, What I breed is going to look like a box of, like clones when they come out. They're going to be black and tan, a little white underneath their neck, And I know what they're going to look like. I know pretty much what they're going to do, And I'm not saying, someone's going to have more talent than others, But I know I've got a good chance to get some good dogs out of that particular cross. And, these boys that breed, like I said, flavor of the month, do that. Then they're always doing, you've known them for 40 years, they're doing the same thing you were the first day you run them at a trial. They're still doing the same thing, And that's just not my thing, I just don't see Beagle in that way. I think each individual has got in his mind what he wants. I think he should stick with it, not jump back and forth. And, the guys that I know over the years that's been really successful at this, not just winning. I don't mean winning all the time, but successful with always having good rabbit dogs, rabbit hounds. You run with them, they got good dogs. When you see them pull up your driveway, that you got your hands full because he's going to put some good dogs out there on you. Well, those are breeders that have stuck with the plan that they had. They have stuck with it. It's an old boy up in Germantown, Ohio. I don't know whether you know him or not, named Don Hogue. You know Don?
Yes, sir.
All right. There's a guy that is stuck with it. He was stuck with the plan, and Don's been real successful. And when he came down here, with the exception of one dog, I knew that I had my hands full when he pulled up the driveway. I knew that I better be ready, because he was darn sure ready. He had one of probably the second best bitches ever I seen. Was a bitch called Big Blue Babe. I don't remember her or not. That was her name. That was Turbo's mother. And Turbo should have been a crackerjack. And Don went on to finish. I never was around him that much. I guess he was a pretty decent dog. Same way about Reggie. I've never been around him. I can't say anything about Reggie. I've never been around him. I ain't been around that dog that much. I seen a bitch that I think the boy's name is Johnson. I believe his last name is. Had a dog called Bad Blue Rising. I never seen him run, but I seen the pup out of him, and I liked her. She was a hard hunting, hard going, hard hitting, and I liked her. And he said, I'll let you have a pup. I said, no. I said, I'm not interested in them. I said, I've got my dogs and my particular line of dogs I like, and I've stuck with them, and I'll probably pretty much stay with them, And but it's some breeders out there that have, over the years, have stuck with their thing, and I think that's where your better dogs come from. Is those breeders that have stayed with it, stayed with that line of dogs, and these other guys have bought the dogs off of them, and are having good luck, with them. That's all you're going to get out of this Beagle thing. It's no money. You know that as well, right? You've been into it. It's no money. You're not going to make anything out of it.
You sure aren't.
You can't.
People think you are. They think you're making a killing, Mr. Long. Oh my goodness. People think you're making millions of dollars until they figure out that all the cost of what you're sending in and stuff doesn't matter how intense or how rapid it's coming in. I hear people's stories say, "Oh man, you can build houses and mansions and golden tickets." Oh my! But I'm thinking to myself, buddy, it's not like you think it is.
No, it's not. He better get his. I tell you what, the best year that I ever had Nick was breeding and selling pups. And after my campaign, his pups and stuff that year, my cigar box where I'd been putting everything in it, I had $7 at the end of the year. That's what I had. That's the profit I had made. Don't get me wrong. I took everything, all my expenses, my travel, my entry fees, motels. I took it all out of that. But that's what I had, and that was the best year I ever had. And now a lot of years I lost my butt. And that's just the way it is, and it's not made to be a money thing. And if you get into that, you're into the wrong reason. It's just not the way it is. You just can't do it. I've seen guys try it, and you look down the road 5 years later, whatever happened to so-and-so out and so-and-so. I said, nobody knows. He's he's not in the Beagles anymore. That's I'm sure you've seen that same way. That they would start like trying to raise puppies and sell the puppies, and all that. Buy some of the best females and get their hands on, and feed them some of the dogs that was winning all the time, and sell a puppy. Yeah, they sold a few puppies, but no ways near what they thought they were going to do. And first thing you know, they're no longer in business. You don't know whatever happened to them. But you take guys like Don Hogue, John O'Truba, Paul Caborni, and some of those boys that've been into it for years and years and years. They're still there. That if you go out there, them the dogs you're gonna have to beat. You're gonna have to beat those boys. If you go out there today, you still gonna have to beat them. Maybe not them, but you're gonna have to beat that line of dogs. They gonna be out. They gonna and the old socket dummy stuff. That old boy up there, he lived close to John. John was talking to me a lot, and he always tell me about what a snow dog he was. And you go out there nowadays, like I said, those guys are not probably not going to beat the crowd, but you're going to have to beat their line of dogs. And you pull that dog that you seen that you liked, you pull up his pedigree and see if it's something. And
Hello?
yeah, are you still there?
Yes, sir. You said pull up his pedigree and what? I'm sorry.
And you pull up his pedigree, and some of that stuff's going to be in there. You're going to see it. Some of the hard work that's done those dogs, you're going to see it. Is that the time something or?
Is that the what? I'm sorry.
Well, I keep hearing the beeping. I thought you might on a timer or something. I didn't know.
Oh no, sir. I think I think your phone may be going dead, Mr. Long.
Oh, you think it is?
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like while you're talking, it skips a little bit. That may be what the situation is. But if that is that what it is?
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Okay.
I never thought that.
Well, if that's what it is, then that's not a problem. We've been on an hour and 14. Let me ask you this question then, just so we can catch it before it dies. If you had to say anything to a group of people that were out there today, especially Maine novices or just getting into dogs right now, if you had X amount of time to say a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, anything you could to them, what would you say to them right now that would help them out that you would think, something that you've gained over time, whatever you would say to them?
Don't ever make a cross till you see the top side and the bottom side. Till you see those dogs run. Don't ever make that cross till you see those dogs run. Maybe, maybe they'll suit you, maybe they won't, but don't never make a cross when you're getting started. Don't go here and start trying to buy. Somebody tell you about this line of dogs. You go look at that dog. You go watch those dogs run. You watch puppies out of those dogs run. If you can't see watch the puppies run and see if that's what you want. That's my idea on it. Don't take somebody else's word, but what they like, you may not like. And just go and trust yourself, trust your own judgment. To see if that's a dog that you're interested in. That's a dog that you really want. And another thing, look hard at how they're put together. A dog has got to be an athlete. He has to be an athlete. If you look at him and he's got one foot going one lane, one going the other, stay away from him. Now I'm a nut when it comes to that. I want my dog to look like. He may not be able to do it, maybe with the speed or something, but I want him to look like that. He could do it and do it all day long. I want him to be cat-footed. I want him straight legs. I want a good bite, and I want a deep chest. Look at a dog and see, that if he wanted to, could he do it? That's the thing about it. And confirmation's everything. I mean, you watch these guys that run track. Watch and see what how they put together. You don't see no guy coming down the track but 1 foot, going out to the side, and running that way, cowhocking. You don't see them athletes that run. You don't see them do that. I watched. I'm way familiar with him, not as long before your time. A guy by the name of Jesse Owens run the Olympics. if you ever seen a headlong shot of him coming down the track, it looked like a machine. He didn't have one wasted motion. His feet was hitting exactly the way they should. They were as straight as they could be. So, you know, when an athlete to run like that, dog has to do the same thing. You know, he has to be a track. He can't have hind legs that flying out to the side and one foot going one way and one foot going another. You know, he's got to be synchronized. That dog has got to have it all together to give you the maximum. Is this phone dead down? Am I just talking to her or what?
Yes, sir. No, that's fine. You're fine, Mr. Long, and I appreciate it. I'm telling you, I definitely appreciate it. I know I didn't want your phone to go dead. That's the only reason I was going to cut it short. But I tell you what, you've said a whole lot today. And one guy says, now the questions will come in. I knew it was going to happen like that. One guy says, at what age? I'm going to try to snatch these two in before your phone dies if I can. If it dies, then we'll just cut it off. But one guy says, at what age does a dog have to be? Hold on, let me see what he's trying to say. At what age that dog has to be 100% hunt, line, smart, athletic? I guess he's trying to say, at what age would you be able to tell if that dog is has the 100% of the hunt, the line control, the smarts, and the athleticness, you know, whatever. I'm guessing that's what he's trying to say.
You know, if you look at a dog and you've had him since a puppy, and now you're looking at a 3-year-old dog, if he don't have it, but then it's a pretty good chance he's not going to have it. You know, that's the way I see it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Another gentleman asked a question, said, ask Lewis about Nick crossed with Indian Hills females.
Any what?
With Indian Hill major females.
Oh, yeah. That's come out of China, too. Yeah, it was probably one of the best little bitches. She wasn't little, but she was 14 inches, but she wouldn't weigh 15 pounds. Her name was Dark-Hearted Lizzie. Probably, pound for pound, the baddest little animal that ever I've seen. I mean, you know, anybody that ever seen her, she beat my butt, you know, at trials. And, I mean, me and the boy would ride together, and she was pound for pound one of the baddest little dogs that ever I've seen. And she was out of R.B. Sister's Nikki female, probably one of the best little bitches. In fact, I finished Nikki down in Arkansas. R.B. made a cross with Nick, with her. And that was a good cross. You know, I had a male that would have went on and finished, but I ran him so hard that I knocked him out one night for the heat stroke, and he never did come back. But the little old dark-colored Lizzie bitch, she was a bad little huzzy. Don't think she wasn't anybody that ever seen her. She wasn't out there alone. And, you know, she's one of them kind that got her wins quick. You know, she wasn't out there alone. And then I had her up here. She had kenneled off and killed herself. Mm-hmm. And she was a young bitch at the time. She died, but she was just almost impossible to beat her. You know, I mean, she was tough. She was just bad. You know, and the boy that had her run her hard. You know, and I ran a lot with him. RB did too, and she was a good one. RB used Nick several times. You know, he crossed with his stuff and used Nick, you know, several times. And you know, I never did. I don't know how he dealt with them because RB would sell them. He was, you know, RB most of the time run small dogs, and these Nick dogs would always be big dogs, you know, big bitches. And he would move them, and you know, I would know. I didn't know what happened to them. You know, I didn't keep up with them. At that time, I was like you are now. I was too busy making a living, you know, trying to keep bread on the table and send kids to school and stuff like that. And but I remember that cross real well, you know, and real well, you know.
Yes, sir.
And he's got a male down there out of the Breezy cross that I'm sure is him called in. He's got one down there now that if he was home, that dog, now he's a house cat. Now he's a good one. I mean, he's a good one. But he's a dog that takes a lot of running. Mm-hmm. He's what we would guess called high maintenance. You've got to run him and run every tail off. Mm. But now the harder better he gets. You know, he ought to be a field champion, but this boy's like I was back then. He's making a living for his family. Him and his wife both in China. They work for Corning, and they were trying to give him a start in life. And sometimes it's other things, just has to push the dogs on the back burner. But this dog here's a good one. He's the real deal. All right, you got anything else?
No, sir, Mr. Long. I definitely appreciate it tonight, and thank you guys that chimed in and asked the questions. We just want to go ahead and chime off of here because we don't want his phone to die, and we don't want to hold you on any longer. We appreciate you, Mr. Long. I'm so glad you was able to say all that you did. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm pretty sure it made a lot of sense to the people that got a chance to listen to it. A lot of people don't usually look at these feeds while they're live. They usually wait till they're not live so they can look at them, so people won't see that they came on and look. But at the end of the day, we're appreciative of everybody that came on. Thank you, Mr. Long. Thank every last one of you guys that came on tonight, because you didn't have to take your time to do it and pay attention to what was going on or what anybody had to say, but we're just grateful. A lot of the people are saying thank you, Mr. Long, as well. I know you can't see them or hear them, but they're saying the exact same thing. Thank you. Thank you guys. Y'all made it. Y'all make this thing. Like I said again, it's not us. It's the Beagler that we bring on and the people that follow it. That's what we're appreciative of the most. So thanks again. Thank you, Mr. Long. I'll be contacting you, and we appreciate you. Have a good evening.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you a lot, buddy.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, guys, we definitely appreciate it. Let's go put the music on. We definitely appreciate it. I'm glad that all of you guys was able to come on tonight. I was going to follow up with my Blue Moon, Kentucky, but my connection on my laptop acts like it wants to mess up. Thank all of you guys again. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, his phone was doing something funky over there. Thank you, Mr. Uden. Yeah, you're always a consistent person. We thank you. Mr. Dave Francis, you asked the question. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. You asked the question about the consistency, about, does he think they have more consistency today than they do yesterday or last year or whatever, not whatever, but, then. He said, I don't know if you heard it before, he said that he hasn't been able to get to the trials like that, so he couldn't really tell you what's out there. But we're just appreciative. Can't say it enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a surprise for next week. We won't be in Kentucky again. I was trying to go there, but because that individual, I guess, sort of backed out. It's not a bad thing. We'll be able to come back to them. I think it's the timing issue. But we have a treat that bred to some old dogs. I mean, I'm talking 60 years ago. It's going to be a treat. Thank all of you guys. Enjoy the rest of you all's evening. Take it easy. Keep them running.